Hello, my name's Asim and I'm the Vice President of Leeds Trinity Students' Union, and today I'm joined with...
Hannah, and I am the founder of the Sober Butterfly Collective.
So today we're going to be talking about Sober Butterfly Collective and a little bit of information about it. So Hannah, I'll be asking you a few questions today, and the first question will be, can you tell me a little bit about yourself and your background, please?
Yeah, of course. So I am 32, so I left university 10 years ago, this year, 10 years ago, like literally to the year. So, so I started Sober Butterfly Collective around sort of 5 years ago, really when I stopped drinking. So I'm 5 years sober. A couple of weeks ago, I hit my 5-year soberversary. And it's been quite a journey, really, I guess, to get there. From literally starting from when I was 14, when I first started drinking. I was the typical sort of binge drinker, drinking on parks, house parties as I grew up. And then when I got to university, obviously it's like the world is your oyster, and alcohol was available like every single day. I joined the dance society at university. So I put myself forward for the committee. So I was on the committee every single year while I was at uni. I was social secretary, then I was events manager, and then I was chairwoman. And it was honestly the best time of my life, like being part of a society. However, then obviously you leave university and people ever go travelling or, move back to different cities. So I went travelling. I didn't go straight into a job. I studied interior design, but the whole way through sort of being 14, I'd worked in hospitality to be able to like just afford the fun times, I guess. So I went away travelling to the other side of the world as far away as I could possibly get. But various things in life brought me home a lot earlier than I'd planned. And I because it wasn't my plan, I kind of just fell back into hospitality. And I ended up as a live-in manager of a venue at age 24. And I did that for 2 years. And that's kind of really where my drinking became more problematic. So it became more of an escapism, a coping mechanism. And when I left the industry, I kind of just realised I'd lost like all my hobbies, all my interests. Like my whole life had become work, essentially. I'd just been living in this bubble. So I just started to kind of look into, as a 26-year-old, what I was interested in. And, my friends lives had moved on. They'd either stayed where we'd grown up in Halifax. I am from Yorkshire. They'd developed very different like hobbies and interests. And I just felt like I had this void that I didn't know how to fill. That was obviously filling with alcohol. So when I was sort of 26, that sort of following year after leaving hospitality was kind of a bit of a search for how to fill that void, really, which was, I needed more connection and belonging and not a new set of friends to replace my friends, but just to suit the, where I was at in my life at that time.
Yeah, thank you. Next question I've got for you, Hannah, is what is Sober Butterfly Collective itself?
So it is now officially a community interest company. So we registered that this year after being just a completely voluntary organisation for the last sort of 4 or so years. And it basically started and evolved from me looking for these new friends that I wanted. And I started to organise, I kind of used Instagram as the tool, really, to help me find some friends. When I'd realised that alcohol was kind of problematic for me, I decided to do Sober October.
Yeah.
I went to a sober social that I'd found online, and I just was in a room full of 30 other women that kind of were saying that they wanted to change their relationship with alcohol in whatever way. And it was the catalyst that changed my life, to be totally honest. And that's where Sober Butterfly came from, because I wanted more of that. I wanted, more sort of friends that didn't want to do things around alcohol. So I organised a coffee morning December 2019. It was my first one, and 14 people said they were going to come along, and only one showed up, which is no surprise, in when you organise events and things. But it was the catalyst that like kind of started Sober Butterfly Collective, really. And then we organised a brunch and then a yoga meet up, and then we went into lockdown. So that was kind of a really tough time because, you know, we all became isolated, like physically.
Yeah.
So Sober Butterfly has kind of evolved to combat social isolation and loneliness by empowering people to make those sort of like genuine and authentic connections without alcohol. So obviously we kind of grew online a lot during lockdown. And then when we came out of lockdown and we were allowed to meet more than 6 people, we hosted a meetup in Harrogate, and people travelled from all over the country.
Good.
Like literally from Essex all the way to Newcastle, Birmingham, Manchester. And I was like, oh, what have I started? Like, I'm just in little old, you know, West Yorkshire. But that kind of really highlighted to me how much people wanted that like connection and in person and not around alcohol as well, because like alcohol is so ingrained in our society. So essentially Sober Butterfly then has just grown from that. We are now a national community. And we host a signature coffee morning on the second Saturday of the month. So literally it's coming up this weekend on the 12th of October. And it'll be happening in 23 locations across the country. And it's made so many, you know, friendships, and people have made so many memories. And it's, as a result, I suppose, helped people to cut down their drinking. You know, we have no rules about how long you've got to have you could never have drank. You could be in recovery and everything in between.
Yeah.
To be part of Sober Butterfly, we just want to, just connect people.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you for that. Next one's hopefully a little bit more easy for you. So for students, what are the benefits for them and how can they actually get involved?
Yeah. So the reason that we're now wanting to work with universities is because, like what I sort of said about my story, like when I left university, like societies were a huge part of my life, and then it disappeared after uni. So we wanted to link in with unis now, so that we can kind of create a Sober Butterfly society as such in the universities, and help connect people and have not as much of an activity based society. So obviously a lot of societies are kind of like dance society, football, like they're very focused on a specific activity, whereas the thread for us is more, it's just, you just want to hang out and make friends without alcohol. So sort of the benefit to students is, we hope that if we can create that within the universities and they can kind of get involved as students and all together. But then if there's actually a Sober Butterfly collective in the city as well, so Leeds, for example, so if we create one at Leeds Trinity, you can be involved in the society within the university, but you can also get involved in what's already happening in and around Leeds. So then when you leave university, you've got the chance, if you stay in the city, to still be a part of the community. Or if you say moved to Manchester for a graduate job, we've got what we call a flutter. So our groups are called flutters. And we've got one over in Manchester. So you can still stay part of that community, and it's run exactly the same way, but in a different city. And I, you know, having spoke to some students and having spoke to sort of university staff, they were like, it's, you know, what a great idea, so that you don't feel like you've got to start again and you don't know where to look. So
yeah, no, that's really interesting. I really like the flutter part as well, because the butterflies do flutter around. So that's nice and cute. Next one then I've got for you, Hannah, is why do you think for this generation, especially the students, it is important to get involved in such a group or activity like this?
So I don't know the exact statistic for this year, but I know for last year, I think it was around 38% of like the current generation are not drinking. Just for various reasons, you know, they're just not getting into it. It's not the same sort of like culture, I suppose, as what even my generation was at university. And I think, you know, this generation has like so much power to make such change, like, and I've seen sort of in the last like 5 years through my sober journey, like the rise of, you know, sober curiosity, or like the health and well-being sort of conversation, like mental health, like, you know, why do people not talk as much about like the link between mental health and alcohol, and you know, things like suicide? And I'm not very good with, like I said, the statistic side of things, but I just think the more that we can talk about this and the more we can raise awareness of it and make it normal to socialize and to do things without alcohol, you know, you can make such change. I just think it's a really exciting time, and to be involved in Leeds Trinity. I mean, you guys have proved it already. Like the fact that you've now changed your student union bar into a cafe because of a
Yeah.
survey that you had at the uni of how many people were not using it because it was a bar. Like you guys have like listened to the students, and that's the change. And and I guess with more international students coming in and people coming from dry countries, like it's just their sort of British culture of of drinking is kind of slowly
No.
kind of dying out. And and I think so it's a really exciting time to be a part of something like Sober Butterfly Collective. We've become a community interest company because we want to help more people. So to get students involved and be at the forefront of that, I would love that.
Yeah, no, that's good. Again, that's interesting to say that you've realised that the communities aren't drinking as much,
Yeah.
and the links it has to mental health and people's well-being in general.
Yeah.
It's a big impact. It's a
Yeah.
very big impact that people don't realise anymore, unfortunately.
Yeah, and I think unfortunately, alcohol isolates people, but also like in both ways. So like whether you do drink alcohol or you don't drink alcohol, like I think I've spoke to people who've heard about Sober Butterfly Collective, never drank, and said how isolated they felt in workplaces or at social events because they haven't drank.
Yeah.
But then you see it on the other end of the spectrum where when you have drank and you've been this big party girl like I was, and had this whole identity built around alcohol. And then when I want to make the change because I've kind of just gone a bit too far across the line, which is a very, very fine line, of what's acceptable and what's fun, and just have one more drink, but people don't necessarily see behind the curtain. And then so when you try to stop, the stigma of trying to stop and do something that's good for your mental health, like a huge part of why I stopped was I read an article about anxiety, and it wasn't the hangovers that made me stop. It was realizing the impact it was having on my mental health and like my potential, like if I'd those years where I was drinking sort of like during school and college and university, like maybe if I hadn't had such a focus on that,
Could have changed something off.
could I have reached a bit more of my potential? I don't like to do regrets, but and I wouldn't be sat here doing what I'm doing now if I hadn't done that. So making that change and that one decision was the best thing I ever did. But it does just make you wonder, like where would I have been if I'd not ever found alcohol?
Yeah, fair enough. Well, again, thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome.
Last question, and I'll finish off with for you
Yes.
is how can our students actually get involved?
Yeah, so very, very exciting. Leeds Trinity are going to be the first university to host our Curious Coffee Catch-Ups within a university. So obviously in your lovely new Trinity cafe, we are going to start it on November the 14th. We're going to do it so it's a Thursday. We're going to do it on an afternoon because obviously I appreciate studies and things. So it'll be from 2 o'clock until around 4 o'clock. They're usually around 2 hours. It's kind of just a bit of a drop in, a casual, way to just meet like-minded people. That's the whole model that we've built the whole of Sober Butterfly Collective from these coffee mornings. The idea then is that people come, they meet, they make connections, they find common things that they have, interests in, and then can kind of build from there. So the hope is that we can start a Sober Butterfly Society from those coffee catch-ups. Obviously, they've got to be student-led, so we would love, any students that come along who would be happy to sort of get that going. Because with Sober Butterfly Collective, nothing is off limits in terms of activities you can try, things you can all do together. Just that one common thread is like it's not going to involve alcohol. And I think looking back when I was at university, pretty much all our socials were around alcohol, or even if they weren't, and we were trying to do a sober social, there would be alcohol in the background somewhere. So it's just about creating that kind of space where people know like they're all going to be on the same level, and it's not going to be pushed on anybody. There's not going to be any peer pressure. There's not going to be any sober shaming whatsoever. And hopefully we can have the first Sober Butterfly Society start at Leeds Trinity.
Yeah.
from-
Perfect.